In 2008, mechanics, engineers, designers, families and friends of McLaren were in the paddock at Interlagos celebrating Lewis Hamilton's first ever Drivers' Championship. And with that, their 12th title overall and first in 9 years. At the top, CEO Ron Dennis, who had been at McLaren since 1980, was instrumental in recruiting star driver Lewis Hamilton at a young age, leaving behind the team principal role to Martin Whitmarsh after the debacle of 2007. Whitmarsh himself had been at McLaren since 1997, immediately seeing the working outfit bring home 2 Drivers' Championships and a Constructors' Championship. Paddy Lowe as engineering director and of course, young world champion Lewis Hamilton. With the 2008 recession hitting Formula One like a ton of bricks, the FIA introduced new regulations for 2009. Whitmarsh and the gang had to design a car good enough to defend their title. And spoiler alert, it was a crapshoot. Halfway through the year, and defending champions Hamilton sat on just 9 points with only 3 top 10 finishes, whilst teammate Kovalainen had just 5 points. Meaning that the great McLaren team were 98 points behind runaway leaders Brawn Grand Prix, who were the main benefactors of the 2009 rule changes, with a hotly disputed double diffuser and a powerful Mercedes-Benz engine, who McLaren were also using. McLaren's bigger budget and improved development saw Hamilton pick up wins in Hungary and Singapore, along with podiums in Europe, Japan and Brazil to make McLaren finish 3rd in the Constructors' Championship, just ahead of Ferrari. Before the start of the 2010 season, McLaren looked to find a stronger partner for Hamilton and a stronger driver for the team by replacing the underperforming Heikki Kovalainen with the defending world champion and fellow Brit Jenson Button. The change immediately paid off. Button picked up wins at both Australia and China, with the latter being a 1-2 finish. Then in Turkey and Canada, Lewis Hamilton drove home back-to-back 1-2 finishes for McLaren. And with just 8 races in, both drivers were 1 and 2 in the standings. Both drivers continued to win and score podiums in order to stay in the hunt for the World Championship. But Button fell out of the picture after the Korean Grand Prix, and Hamilton took it to the final race of the season with Vettel, Webber and Alonso, eventually losing out to Sebastian Vettel. In 2011, McLaren improved on their constructors' points total by more than 50 points. Despite 3 wins for both Button and Hamilton, they were no match for the Red Bull juggernaut and star driver Sebastian Vettel, who finished 122 points ahead of Button. With Lewis entering the final year of his contract, McLaren were working extremely hard to deliver a title-contending car, and that is exactly what they did. The MP4-27 was one of the 3 cars that didn't have the platypus nose, and instead going for the gradual slope nose. It locked out the front row in the opening race in Australia, which was won by Jenson Button. Hamilton once again put it on pole in Malaysia before he himself won the Canadian Grand Prix in Montreal, the 7th of 8 different winners to start the season. Hamilton scooped his annual win in Hungary along with wins in Italy and the United States, whilst Button won in Belgium and Brazil. But the 2012 season for McLaren wasn't without its fair share of hard luck. In the European Grand Prix, Hamilton was on course for a podium finish when he started to be caught by the Williams of Pastor Maldonado with a couple of laps to go. Going into turn 13, a move from the Venezuelan saw him run wide on the exit, and as he tried to rejoin, he clipped the curb and hit Hamilton, taking him out of the race. At Spa, starting in 7th place, Hamilton was looking to get it to jump on Fernando Alonso, but a jump start in Grosjean aggressively drove on the outside of Hamilton, squeezing him, colliding and causing a huge crash at the first corner involving the Brit and collecting Alonso in the process. A drop in performance for McLaren in 2012, and they even fell behind Ferrari to finish in 3rd place. After promising seasons in which they totaled a combined 17 wins between drivers Jenson Button and Lewis Hamilton, McLaren would have to find a new driver to replace Hamilton. They opted for a young Mexican by the name of Sergio Perez, who had impressed Whitmarsh with his performances at Sauber, including a 2nd place at Malaysia and Italy, 3rd in Canada and a fastest lap honour at Monaco. The 2012 car was at the end of the development cycle, which meant that the team had to start over from 2013. As testing came around, there were false hopes. The car appeared to be quick, but it was later found that an incorrectly placed part on Button's car had inexplicably made it quicker around the track, something that just couldn't continue. A poor showing in Australia showed that the team didn't completely understand how the car behaved in race conditions. The 2013 McLaren team would produce a season worse than 2009. With McLaren failing to score in Canada and at the home race in Silverstone, they continued to struggle in the middle of the pack throughout the season. In Spain, Button's fastest lap was 0.05 of a second ahead of backmarker Max Chilton's fastest lap. And the duo of Button and Perez combined to barf out a total of 0 wins and 0 podiums in the season, finishing in 9th and 11th respectively in the Drivers' Championship, whilst McLaren sat in 5th place. A truly dreadful season by their standards, but worse things were yet to come. After just one season, Sergio Perez was booted out the number 2 seat at McLaren in favour of the Formula Renault Series champion Kevin Magnussen. The new McLaren with its V6 turbocharged hybrid engine was designed by Tim Goss and Matt Morris instead of the usual Paddy Lowe and Neil Oatley, with Paddy Lowe eventually working for Mercedes the next year. In the opening race of the season, McLaren drivers Magnussen and Button finished in 2nd and 3rd at Albert Park after Ricciardo's disqualification. The Dane became only the 16th driver to score a podium on their F1 debut, and first since Lewis Hamilton did in 2007, in this exact same race with the exact same team. But like 2013, this was the peak of their season. It was the only 2 podiums McLaren would get in 2014. Button did come close on many occasions, but the car was not good enough to compete with Red Bull and Mercedes. History would repeat itself in 2015. After just one season, Magnussen too was given the boot. McLaren didn't replace him with a young driver this time. Instead, in came 2-time world champion and former driver Fernando Alonso. Ron Dennis stated that this was the best partnership in F1. He also said that McLaren would dominate again with their new Honda-powered engine, ending a 20-year partnership with the Mercedes engine. It was assumed Alonso was brought in to help develop the car and improve the team around McLaren. If you thought 2013 and 2014 were low points for McLaren, 2015 would be the absolute rock bottom. With the first points coming at race number 6, an 8th place from Jenson Button at Monaco, McLaren would only score points finish at 4 more races, just 6 points finishes overall. 5 straight races where at least one of them retired from the race, all came together to produce a pitiful 27 points in the season, good enough for 9th place in the standings. The great McLaren racing team were the 2nd worst team in all of Formula One. A 6th place finish in 2016 was followed by Jenson Button's retirement and Ron Dennis's departure from the CEO role. In 2017, the car was slow and the engine unreliable. A 6th place finish in Hungary was the highest McLaren would place in the season. All that was enough for them to once again finish in 9th place in the constructors' standings and bring this collapse to a close.